had a very eccentric, I still have a very eccentric friend named Dan Beckman, and his family had always gone to Santa Fe, and he said, you know, there's a lot of eccentric people in Santa Fe. You should move there. So I said, okay, let me come out and I'll visit. So I went out and I met him and his wife there, and I had a good time and I loved it. And I have to say, what was I, about 27 years old? I was not all that like concerned about much. I was pretty free, and I thought, well, I could leave New York, and if I didn't like it, I could go back to New York. So I rented an apartment and I got this job, and I moved to Santa Fe. Santa Fe at that time had less than 1 million people in the state of New Mexico. New Mexico had less than 1 million people in it. Santa Fe had about 100,000 people. I think that's doubled or tripled now. And I think the whole state of New Mexico has about 2 million people. Mostly New Mexico is national forest. It's really beautiful, empty land. People think of New Mexico usually as a desert, and there is the high mountain desert, and there's, you know, huge swaths of, you know, desert, low mountain desert with the piñons and the junipers. But there's the high mountain desert full of ponderosas and, you know, huge piñons and wild grasses. And it's just completely different than what one might imagine. So there's a diversity in landscape, and I didn't know that. And I loved it. I also liked the fact of living in a very unpopulated place. I also was incredibly naive, and I had never heard of Los Alamos, believe it or not. So that I learned all about when I first got there, and I started working for an organization called Concerned Citizens for Nuclear Safety, CCNS. Just started volunteering my time. And they said there's going to be a demonstration. So the waste isolation pilot project, WIP, WIPP, that's the acronym for the Waste Isolation Pilot Project, which was a huge deal at that time. And that would have been in the early 90s. And they were taking the waste from Los Alamos that had just been like tossed in the woods or buried in canisters or whatever. And they were going to truck it across the state in these huge vehicles and bury it in Carlsbad Caverns. So there was a lot of contention. Well, they did it. I mean, and it's probably still being done. And anyway, I mean, there's just so much information about why that's a bad idea. But one of the immediate bad ideas was, what if one of these trucks has an accident and, you know, contamination is spreading? What will one do? What will the emergency response team do? So I went to the mall, the DeVargas Center parking lot, where they had an emergency response vehicle set up for a situation like this. And what they had was men in hazmat suits with a garden hose and a kiddie pool. And their plan was to put the victim in the kiddie pool and hose them off with tap water, radioactive waste. So it was unbelievable. I'll never forget that. So, you know, what irony. I mean, I think that it's a metaphor for our entire culture.